Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teachers in the Dungeon. I'm Tom Gross.
Spooky, scary skeletons. I don't even know how the song goes, but...
You stole my song.
Same wavelength.
Yes, indeed. Too much time together here in the dungeon.
I'm Dan Ream, by the way.
Yes. Well, we are in that time where the spiders have taken over the dungeon.
Yes.
Spider webs and cobwebs are thick.
Ghosts.
Bats.
Specters.
Yes. Creepy, clanky sounds coming from places. It's that time of year, you guys. Yes. So we're going to talk about some creatures that are traditionally thought of at this time of year here in the spooky season.
Yes.
I know you've read the title of the show, so it's no secret that we're going to talk about undead. But as always, I believe Dan has a spooky introduction for us.
Okay. Hungry. So hungry. Nothing else matters. There is nothing else. Just hunger. Stumble forward, or perhaps glide, or perhaps move swiftly and silently, but always toward the warm smell of living flesh. Desire and hate combine into overwhelming hunger. There, movement in the dark forest, and a little light. The ruddy light of a dancing wood fire. Voices low and steady. Careful now. Slip in close to the ring of light. Prepare to lunge. And yet, the voices seem familiar. The words sink slowly into a moldering brain, and slowly the meaning becomes clear. They are speaking of the past, of the departed, with warmth and love. They speak of you. A thick, syrupy tear emerges from a sunken eye. But the hunger, it must be sated. You lunge into the circle of light, biting and tearing at the nearest living thing, seeing in his eyes terror and recognition.
I'm waiting for the Vincent Price. Very, very well done.
Went a little dark, but
nice.
Kind of have to for this time of year, I think.
Yes, of course. I was thinking thriller there for a few minutes. Where they're all, okay, great. Halloween used to be my favorite holiday, and now as an adult, not so much.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know why. I guess I don't.
Because I scared you years ago when you came trick-or-treating to our house?
Yeah, that's right. My favorite line was when Kate reprimanded the shambling mound. I don't remember exactly what she said. Swamp creature, that's right.
So,
that's the best.
So my kids, my daughter in particular, bought into Halloween hook, line, and sinker. And yes, so several years ago, she dressed up as a witch. I was a zombie. And we found a ghillie suit for my then 7th grade son, Will. Yeah. And he was very happy to give up I didn't think he would, but he gave up trick-or-treating so he could lie around in the yard and scare people.
Just great. It's fantastic.
So the kids would come up for trick-or-treats, the parents would stand back and wait, and he would lunge the parents.
Yes. And I remember Kate going, "Swamp creature, stop," or "settle down," or something. It was just so well said and played, and the whole thing. It was just great. So yeah, we're going to talk about undead today.
I did find some, like, general description, like, of the entire category.
Okay.
So I did find this online. Undead were creatures that had died and then been animated by spiritual or magical forces. Some deities employ undead as divine servants. Some, they use them as divine messengers. Undead are extremely resilient to a number of effects and substances that would be harmful to the living. So they're immune to all mind-affecting effects, poison, sleep effects, paralysis, stunning, and disease. It's not possible to drain their life force in any manner. There are 6 basic ways a creature can become undead.
Oh.
Purposeful personal reanimation, where you seek it out yourself.
Okay.
As a minion, so someone turns you into that.
Okay.
Atrocity calls to unlife, so something so awful that you've done or is done to you that you pop back up.
Okay.
Unfinished business. Dark forces, including an evil spirit animating a corpse. or death by wounds caused by another undead.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Wow, there's undead is a character or is a creature group that I tend to lean towards as a DM.
Yeah.
I find them to be fascinating. There's massive amounts of levels of difficulty
Yes.
within the undead community. And I'm really intrigued by that list of 6 you just mentioned, because and most of the listeners who've listened to the Waterdeep story know that my big bad right now, as far as is an undead creature that I will talk about today. But I was just thinking, okay, which way was she created off of that list? And it's kind of a combo of 2 different ways. And one of them, you as the players your characters would not be aware of, because you don't know the whole story, but yet anyway. And so, okay, that was really helpful, actually, that little piece right there. So
there's one other thing that I found that was kind of cool too.
Yeah.
You can have a creature with a body but no soul and no mind.
Yes.
That's like example zombie.
Mm-hmm.
A creature can have a body and a mind but no soul.
Yeah. Right.
Vampire.
Yes.
A creature can have a body and a soul, but no mind.
Okay.
Maybe a revenant.
Yeah.
A creature can have a soul and a mind but no body. A ghost.
A ghost. Mm-hmm.
So, and then this person that talked about this, I found this on a Reddit list. In theory, this means that you could kill a person and reanimate their corpse as a zombie, and their ghost could also hang around.
I mean, yes. I suppose so.
And they were saying that could,
that's cool.
They said that could be some interesting role play for the DM.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Don't eat that.
There could be adventure there as well, like reconnecting the spirit and the body to, I don't know, for whatever reason, for some awful reason probably, but yeah, okay, I like that.
So,
man, my mind is really stirring on those pieces of different manifestations of an undead, and like what might be causing them to do the things that they do.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, so some of the obvious, when I think undead, the first thing that comes to mind is a skeleton.
Yeah.
They're common, they're easy fodder. In order for them to be really dangerous, these either has to be a first level, or second level group, or they have to just be in hordes.
Yes.
Or you beef them up in some way, which I've been known to do that with skeletons, beef them up a little bit. Can I just say, just real quick, and then we can dive into some seriousness here. Every time I play a ghost as a DM, I cannot get the vision of Casper the Ghost out of my head. When you guys fought that ghost it was in a dungeon.
The Citadel, I think.
Citadel. When you fought and it was the ghost that eventually you were in a battle, and it's the ghost battle where the sword was destroyed.
Yes.
I could not, and it aged. I want to say it aged. Well, Iron Claws isn't. It was
Cursus got
aged, and it was Marcus's character. Bully-Eye. Bully-Eye? No, that was
Dursley.
It was Dursley. That's right. It wasn't Waterdeep. It was this group that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that whole time I thought about Casper which is just doesn't work. It doesn't quite do the same justice to it as some awful, horrifying, scary looking ghost.
Yeah. So how do you want to go through these? I've got my, I guess, favorites, but they're listed by CR, or we could kind of try to group according to similarities.
I started with CR, but then it fell apart really quickly. So my list has, I don't even know how to explain it. 2 of them are just like parts of bodies that are undead. 2 are like lumbering creatures that are undead. one is the big guy that I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got sort of a couple of just utility creatures.
Okay.
So I don't know. However you want to do it, and I'll fit mine in with yours.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know that, but we can just kind of freeform it. I think within the family that skeletons fit in, or zombies, of course, and those are fun to describe, I think.
Yeah.
And they can be frustrating for players since they can have that undead resilience where they pop back up.
Yep.
With some frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that same general one, I don't know if you're going to mention this, so we can save it for later if you want, but the crawling claw.
I've got that here. Yeah, we can talk about that.
I mean, that's sort of in the same general family. And then I did see this one when I was just researching online. Apparently someone has homebrewed something called a stomping foot.
That's in the same family as like the crawling claw. So
Thump, 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 thump.
Geez. I'm trying to think what causes your foot to jump like that. So it must have an Achilles still in there someplace.
Maybe the toes
so it's like
are able to...
like bottom of your shin down or something. But okay, the stomping foot. Is that what it's called? Stomping foot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that, because can I be honest? I'm always honest, by the way. I don't know why I said can I be honest. I never noticed the crawling claw in the monster manual until this. Never saw it, never paid attention to it. And all I could think when I started reading about it was the Addams family.
Yeah.
And I couldn't remember, is it or is it thing? Thing is the hand. Okay, that's what this is, right?
Yeah.
It just like and can go around. But I had this horrifying image, which is I think what undead are supposed to do. So a crawling claw basically is an animated hand of a freshly killed murderer or dismember, like the hand is cut off of a murderer. And it said that these necromancers will oftentimes go to like public executions of criminals and they'll snag the hand off of a recently executed, or they'll make deals with assassins or others that deal in death of those types of people, and they will grab the hands. They'll cut the hands off of the arms of these corpses and take them and animate them. And so you can give a crawling claw basic directions, not kill this person, but kill anything that enters, or kill all in this house, or something like that. Or you can even give it things like find a key and bring it to me, because it can feel like it can search through things in a house and feel it, because it doesn't have eyes.
Yeah.
It moves about by senses completely. And so it can sense it, touch the key. So if it's something that's material, it can touch it, figure out what it is, and then
it's very spider-like about
return it. Yes. And so I was just like, you could go to, I don't know, a noble's house if you're a necromantic wizard, and bring your creeping claw or your crawling claw and just send the creeping claw into the noble's house and say, kill everybody inside. I mean, I'm just picturing this hand going. I don't know. It just is an awful thing.
Or a whole bag of them.
Yeah,
crawling in.
So I was trying to figure out if it's possible, but it says that. So in order to be able to command one, to give it a command, you have to see it. So yeah, I guess you could dump them all out. And then you'd have to mentally look at, I guess, each one individually.
In the bag and just stare at all of them in the bag.
Yeah, stare at all of them in the bag. Give them the command of kill everything in this building. Dump it. Oh, good God, that's awful. And then, okay, so did you read the part about where it could... So if the body is still living, so you could cut the hand off of a living body, animate it, it will reconnect to the living body, but still as the claw. Did you catch that?
Why are you hitting yourself?
I mean, that's what the wording of it was a little vague. Actually, I have it here. If you don't mind me reading, you know I like to read. If a crawling claw is animated from a severed hand of a still living murderer, The ritual binds the claw to the murderer's soul. The disembodied hand can then return to its former limb, its undead flesh knitting to the living arm from which it was severed. Made whole again, the murderer acts as though the hand had never been severed and the ritual had never taken place. When the crawling claw separates again, the living body falls into a coma. Destroying the crawling claw while it is away from the body kills the murderer. However, killing the murderer has no effect on the crawling claw.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the benefit.
So maybe if the murderer has control, he can send his hand.
So he would go into a coma.
Like an undead mage hand.
Yeah, so he would go into a coma.
So he'd have to be safe.
Yes.
Send it off to kill somebody and it comes back.
Okay.
That's pretty risky because those are not that resilient.
No, it's more about the sneakiness of it because it only has, 2 hit points. It's a 1d4 hit die. Armor class 12, which I thought it would actually be higher.
Might be because it's hard to hit. Maybe because it's small.
Yeah, no, I thought it would be more. It's
higher.
it's not as dexterous as I thought it would be. It's a 14 dex, but nonetheless, I mean, if it's not going in for the purpose of killing something, you like the murderer might say, "Okay, my hand, you're going to go in and you're going to steal this in the middle of the night," and so that would probably be a safer use of that skill than trying to kill people, unless it's something is unguarded or unexpected or something like that. Anyway, crawling claw. I mean, from the show, I knew it existed, but I never knew it was in D&D.
If you're a horror fan, there's a kind of a cult horror movie, Cabin in the Woods, by Joss Whedon.
Just going to say that sounds awful from the start.
It's got Chris Hemsworth in it.
Really?
One of his early roles. It's very meta. It's actually, and Sigourney Weaver is in it.
Okay, wow.
It's actually it threads the needle. It's a comedy that kind of pokes fun at horror movies, but also a horror movie.
Okay, yeah.
And there is a scene where there is a crawling hand that kills a bad guy, so it's okay. But yes,
that's okay. All right, crawling claw. Yeah, that's my lowest CR. But you mentioned zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in my head, this next one that I'll just bring up and then we can talk about it is I always mix up in my head with zombies, and that is mummies. So the way in which they walk about, I think, is where I lose, because they're not very similar in description of how they're created. A mummy is a little bit more intentional and a little bit more... The living turning to the dead wasn't necessarily intended, because a zombie or a mummy comes from a death and a burial that is very ritualistic. Like I think Egyptian, where they embalm the body, they wrap it in cloth, and so I almost see like someone of a noble becomes a mummy. I don't know, but that was very specific in the description of how a mummy is created, because then the necromantic wizard or priest or whatever that comes in, they write the spell and the language that creates it into a mummy onto the wrappings themselves. Now, this might be a very specific description of how a mummy is brought, and I just picked up on it, but the fact that it's a real ritualistic burial is what makes it be a mummy.
Okay,
is what I was getting from it.
Yeah, well, I know they're nastier than zombies, obviously, much higher up on the CR, but I mean, in my mind, they're similar because they're just trying to get you, and they're slow moving undead.
How does a zombie kill? I mean,
it's slam attacks.
So slam attacks, because a mummy attacks also with its hands but claws, and if you were infected, you from the outside in rot away, and I don't know how long it takes. I didn't catch that, but you rot away to dust eventually.
Okay.
And so I didn't know,
I mean, obviously in movies, zombie bite makes you a zombie.
Makes you a zombie.
You do that. I don't think they've got that here.
Okay. So mummies and zombies, now I know what the difference is. I mean, mummies in Halloween, they're always wrapped, I guess, and zombies, they walk with their arms out in front of them. I don't know. Anyway, so there's a distinction.
So I suppose we could... looking at as sort of subcategories, one that's very closely related to that maybe fits here are ghouls and ghasts.
Yes.
So do you have those down, or did
I do.
Okay.
I do. The language that was in the player's handbook that I really liked is the epitome of horror. Ghouls and ghasts. Something that I've forgotten about these two, I knew, but I'd forgotten about, was one is smarter than the other and can lead the other. And I always get them mixed up. Is it a ghoul is more the dumb and like vicious, and a ghast has intelligence and can lead a horde of ghouls?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you do have the Moreji in Mordenkainen's, I believe, that's like a super ghast.
Oh, okay.
That
can be like
that can create new ones and can raise. Well, no, maybe it can't create. Can raise ghouls or ghasts that have been killed again.
Got it. All right. Ooh, it's like a never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
They just keep coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the epitome of horror comes back there. What were they originally? I was thinking there was a story about. That's right.
Yeah.
And
so they're elvish undead.
They have like an elf is named as the original that Orcus created. Here, I'll look it up here because I thought that was an interesting story.
Yeah. So while you're doing that, just they've got a stench about them that gives you a poisoned condition if you're not careful. Their goal is to paralyze you with their claws. The claws don't do as much damage as the bite, but they can paralyze you. Okay. And then because they just want to eat.
Then they maul you.
So they're gonna, and according to the monsters know what they're doing, once they paralyze you, they just will stop anything else they're doing and just eat. And they'll try to, the ghast is smart enough to take you and run, so it gets away from people who might try to save you. But they will stop attacking other people and just concentrate on the meal. Which
you did to us in Slight, if I remember right.
Yes.
It was the battle where I shot Bert in the back with an arrow, but that's not the part that really should be remembered. It was the townsfolk that were getting mauled. It was actually the people that we were trying to help. Did they come to our rescue, or we were helping them get to someplace? I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was an awful fight.
Yeah.
Because of that mauling. It just didn't leave a good feeling inside as a player that we let things like that happen to people.
Yes. I think that was the farm family maybe you were trying to say.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So here's the abyssal origins. This is from the monster manual. Ghouls trace their origin to the abyss. Doresian, the first of their kind, was an elf worshipper of Orcus. Turned against his own people, he feasted on humanoid flesh to honor the demon prince of undeath. As a reward for his service, Orcus transformed Doresian into the first ghoul. He served Orcus faithfully in the abyss, creating ghouls from the demon lord's other servants until an incursion by Inagu, the dynamic Knoll Lord, robbed Doresian of his abyssal domain. When Orcus would not intervene on his behalf, Doresian turned to the elf gods for salvation. They took pity on him, which I was surprised, and helped him escape certain destruction. Since then, elves have been immune to the ghoul's paralytic touch, which I thought was kind of a cool story to explain where they come from, but that the original was forgiven.
Yeah.
And that's why it gives an explanation as to why elves are not affected by the paralytic touch, which I thought was really cool.
That is cool.
So ghouls and ghasts.
Yep.
What you got next?
So, I have a whole bunch of ghost adjacent ones.
I don't think I have any ghosts. So let's hear about those.
So I'll just list them real quick and we can talk about a couple or none or whatever. But there's the Shadow, the Spectre, Will-o'-the-Wisp, Banshee, Wraith. Those are the ones I've got. And so all of those are disembodied. They all have... They're all a little tougher than... The one that... The weakest of those is the Shadow, but a lot of people who really understand the mechanics of D&D say they're very overpowered.
The Shadow is.
It's only... It's like a CR 1/2, but you shouldn't treat it like other 1/2s as a DM, because it once it locks itself on you, it's very difficult to get it off, and it can kill a lower level player pretty quickly. But of those other things that I know, specters and wraiths are just nasty.
Yeah.
The wraith is the more powerful. The specter is less, but they both function similarly. They both do a life drain.
I was going to say life drain is what I know from them for
They're
this.
very fast. They're very difficult to hit because they're incorporeal.
Mm-hmm.
Banshees have a little more character to them. They are usually an elven maiden, or it could be any elf. That basically a banshee is what happens to you when you are narcissistic to the last degree.
Okay.
So into your own looks and everything, and then you're usually killed in some sort of way, and your spitefulness endures.
Okay.
And so a banshee is interesting because it does crave the living, it craves beauty, but hates it too, because it itself has deteriorated and is no longer beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so it will kind of talk and interact with a group of characters until something sets it off, and then it just goes after him. And it's got that Banshee's wail that if you hear it, drops you to 0 hit points right away.
That happened to one of us.
It happened to Deerishley.
Yeah.
And
that was, you threw one of those at us. I'm trying to think, there's something else you just talked about that you've thrown at us.
Most of these, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The Will of the Wisp that one is cool.
I think those are the most interesting. Yeah, tell us about those.
So they look like, essentially, and again, this is like everything else on this list pulled from actual human folktales.
Mm-hmm.
So walking alone in a forest or a swampy area, it's like a ghost light.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of stories about it in actual human mythology, but in D&D, it is a malevolent spirit that tries to lure you off into dangerous parts of a swamp. So it'll try to look like a lantern that someone's carrying to try to make you follow and see what it is. And then it can attack you too. It's actually, again, it's fairly low CR, but an insanely high AC because it's so fast. It's very hard to hit. And it basically just shocks you to death if it can. But the thing that makes it dangerous is that if you go down to 0 hit points, it will attempt to just take your soul. And if it does, then you're dead.
Right. We faced those in Sliant on the boat.
Yes.
I'm trying to think, and then...
It'd be strange of me to have put them on a boat, but I guess I could.
No, they were out we were floating up the river, but down.
Okay.
And they were out in the woods.
Yes.
And I don't know that it ever lured us off the boat. Maybe one of us? No, someone went to shore. Mm-hmm. And then that's when it attacked, but then it also made it onto the boat. Because are they singular creatures that have multiple lights, or each one is a different creature?
Each one's a different creature.
Yeah. And
in the D&D lore, it says they're actually fairly intelligent, and they will team up with other creatures.
Okay, maybe that's what happened. I don't remember, but I remember the lights, and we were trying to figure out what the lights were, and I think it did get someone off the boat. Probably me. I don't know.
Yeah, and most of these are just straight up evil. The ghosts are the ones that actually, there can be good ghosts. So your Casper thing isn't totally off. You can, as a DM, obviously a DM, you do whatever you want. You could make a good zombie if you wanted to, or a good ghoul.
Right.
It's a little more of a stretch. Yeah. Ghosts more naturally fit into they can be malevolent, they can be helpful.
Because they have a lot of connection to their prior life.
Yes.
Ghosts
so they've got their soul. Mm-hmm. They've got their soul and their mind. They just don't have a body.
Right.
So if they were a good person that was turned into a ghost somehow, they would probably remain good.
Right. Probably the closest thing I have to something like that, I guess there's a couple of them, but I took out of the Monsters of the Dungeon from Kwood Publishing, The Sum of All Tears. Nice. This creature appears as a dark cloud filled with human faces, or humanoid faces, and it has 4 wispy tendrils that stretch from a central body. It is an eternally depressed creature that its mission is to spread its misery and looks for others that have like this evil and negativity. And so you'll find this oftentimes in a dungeon, but usually where you find cultists or greedy merchants or a thieves guild. These things will hang around those to feed off of their anger and hatred.
Okay.
And
That's cool.
and they'll feed off of those people as well as they kind of make their ways. And so you could find them in there. Their main attack is a groan of agony, which does psychic damage to whoever's in the area. So kind of it's a fun name, as Kaywood always does.
Yes.
I like the fact that it lurks among other things that are in misery like it.
Misery loves company.
That's right. Sure does. What other categories do you have?
Well, from here on out, I was just going to pick a couple of higher level ones that I've used that I like. Mm-hmm. So
go ahead.
The one is Bodak.
I saw those.
That is a really, as a DM, I like the fact that they can do some pretty nasty things to you. Mm-hmm. So they're definitely scary. They have kind of that life drain type, soul drain, where you lose HP permanent, or your max drops
goes down
because of them. Mm-hmm. They've got this aura that just even being near it takes some of your hit points.
Right.
So if you're going to go in melee with these things, you're on the clock. You got to get through your battle with them before their very presence kills you.
What I don't remember is, are they solitary? Like they are creatures made by Orcus, if I remember right. They're like servants of Orcus. Mm-hmm. So they have a pretty direct line to the big guy. Mm-hmm. But I can't remember because if they were in packs, that would be
I sent 2
dreadful
against you guys.
Okay.
When you were probably level 5 or level 6.
I thought I remembered the name. I just don't remember fighting them.
And you had an NPC cleric with you who was able to turn one of them and kind of give you guys some time.
All right. But I can see, looking at the picture of them, and I think isn't that in the Monsters of the Multiverse? Does that sound right?
I'm sure it is. It's not in the monster manual. I think it might be Volo's is where they first showed up. Okay.
Looking at a picture of them, it looks like you could almost camouflage a Bodak as like an old haggish kind of woman. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know that they really need to camouflage because they're that powerful, but certainly to lure someone close, you could probably describe them in that way. They're sort of shortish. They wear looks like they have a cowl, unless that's part of what they are, but they're awful looking things. The faces are just scary.
Yes.
Got a very like long face with a mouth and eyes that droop.
It's just emptiness, kind of a void thing.
They're awful things. Something I thought, this is an undead that I pulled out, and this was in the Monsters of the Multiverse. I pulled it out because I thought it had really cool story possibilities. And this isn't, I think it's, again, I'll have to lean on you for the pronunciation of it. An alip?
Yes. That's how I would say it.
So this is an alip is created by a person, a humanoid, that discovers some like cosmic, unbelievably highly secretive secret. Mm-hmm. And that secret, knowing it, brings a curse along with it. The example they use, which I thought, I could see how this would cause this to happen, is if you were to learn the true name of a demon. That's a secret that is well kept. And so the curse makes you into this agonizing undead creature called the alip. The curse makes you just not be able to think about anything else other than that secret. And it's painful and it's agonizing, and all the alip wants to do is get rid of the secret. It wants to share the secret. Its goal is to give it away, to relieve its agony. The problem is it can't communicate the entire thing all at once. It can't tell whatever it encounters. And so, and then when it tells that secret to the person or the whatever it's trying to share the secret with, it puts them in agony as well, therefore causing like a combat or a battle. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say about it. Oh, the storyline that I thought would be really kind of neat is one of the things an alip will do is it will find a scribe or someone who writes history. Maybe would hide in a library someplace, and it will attach onto somebody who would start writing, and then as the alip becomes a little bit more influential, it causes that person to become mad with like terror and continue to write and write and write. And over days, months, maybe even years, eventually that secret will come onto the pages that person writes. But they become like a madman in writing to the point of like insanity. And so that could be a storyline where...
That'd be cool, yeah, where you, as a party, come and rescue...
Yes, try to help this person and figure out why.
And that creature emerges and says, you can't take my...
Right, because they're in the process of like expunging their like curse. It makes me it really gives me the creepies. Because then if someone were to come across that book, or this is another part of the storyline, is someone comes across that book and they spend time reading it, they gradually become an alip because they're discovering the secret that the alip had recorded to get rid of the curse. I don't know. And then it's cool to think about like, okay, what would be such an awful secret to know besides just a demon's name, which I think is really cool and intriguing. Because then, I mean, what if you know that secret and somehow you meet that demon or something, and I don't know, awful things could happen. Especially if it inflicts one party member and they become sort of crazed, and then what does everybody else do to help that person?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of cool things, and it's like when I think of undead, I think of the creatures that we've talked about, where it's just straight up, I got to kill that thing.
Yeah.
And I know what I'm facing, and I got to go after it, and I need to do that. But the alip is so slow to, or has the potential to be so slow to like overtake something, and it holds a secret. And so what if other people discover that secret? What happens to it then? So I thought the alip was kind of a cool, intriguing creature to use. I'm sad that I said that because of the way you're looking at the ceiling in deep thought. So let's forget about the alip and move to something more concrete.
I don't think I would use it with you guys, but I definitely have some campaigns I'm running where it would show up.
Well, good. You guys enjoy. What else do you know that I have one last thing, but what else do you have?
You've got one left?
I do.
Okay. So I'll just, the things I've got left for the most part are much more well-known. Vampire.
Ooh, I was hoping you'd talk about them. Yeah.
So D&D does a pretty good job of translating essentially Bram Stoker's Dracula to D&D. So vampires are a mid to high level enemy. They have got all kinds of nasty power if you meet them on their turf. They have certain weaknesses, obviously, with sunlight, running water, those sorts of things, holy water, that do make them vulnerable. They do create followers the same way that you see in other lore.
Right.
And they very much follow the debonair, suave type of creature, as opposed to the more monstrous original vampire type creatures that you hear about in Eastern European mythology. So it's not Nosferatu. It's definitely more Bram Stoker.
Right. So
there's that. The rest are just, I think, will lead into yours nicely, where D&D has just taken various actual monsters and said, what if they turned undead?
Okay, right.
So, Dracolich, a Death Tyrant, Demilich, Death Knight.
Yep.
These are all were once, well, I mean, they're all were once living, otherwise they wouldn't be undead. But Death Tyrant is what happens to a beholder if it gets turned undead.
Yep.
A Death Knight is a paladin that's been turned undead. Dracolich, obviously, is a dragon that's been turned undead.
Right.
So,
I mean, as if a beholder and a dragon aren't bad enough. Let's make it into a lich.
Well, and that's what's interesting is I think it actually weakens those two. A Lich, at least, is not nearly as scary as a full-on living adult dragon.
That is true.
Still bad, but less so.
But what makes it different is, and I guess, I don't know, I mean, dragons live for years and years, but a Lich essentially makes it immortal unless it were actually killed. And so Liches they hide, they don't want to be seen. They are very much in the background and cause things to happen, and they try to hide because they became a Lich, become immortal. And so therefore they know that they can be killed, but they will outlive anything as long as they remain hidden.
And I would guess, maybe this is already in the lore, but other dragons I would think would take a pretty dim view of any dragon that chose to become undead.
I would imagine. I don't know that, but yeah.
Sort of disrespectful of your own heritage or something like that.
Right. I think they're just consumed. I mean, just like any other lich, they're so consumed with their own power that what's more powerful than being a dragon that lives for centuries than being an immortal dragon that lives forever.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the driving direction for doing that. But yeah, I don't think a dragon would look very kindly upon a dragon who's made that choice. Yeah. So,
all right, that leads nicely into what you've been waiting to talk about.
It does, because you know that I absolutely love liches. Now, not as a DM. As a DM, I love liches. I would never want to face one as a player necessarily.
One of my daughter's cosplays was just a white T-shirt where she put the letters "Lich, please" on it.
Well, that is, yeah. I mean,
that's a choice.
That is a choice, and that's what being a lich is. It's a choice. You aren't, in most cases, you aren't just made into a lich. You have to make the decision for that to happen. So one of the reasons why I love liches so much, and really undead kind of fits into this when you're talking about vampires. I mean, some of the most famous monsters and creatures in D&D lore are undead. You know, you mentioned vampires. Strahd has his own book.
Yes.
And so, you know, he's an amazingly legendary creature. On the cover of the Dungeon Master's Guide is a famous lich. A Sarek is on the cover of the Dungeon Master's Guide from 2014. And so you've got a Sarek who creates the Tomb of Horrors, one of the most legendary dungeons that a creature, that someone could ever go into. You have Zastam, who we see just a little bit of in the movie Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. He's in the shadows there, but you can also come across Zastam in the R.A. Salvatore books about Dritz Duerden. Okay. Zastam is a player there. He's from the cult of Thay, or the people of Thay. You also have Vecna, who makes his way into popular culture through Stranger Things. But Vecna is famous for his eye and is it the hand of Vecna?
Yes.
And so he's there. Then you have another famous lich that is created from the heart of Vecna. That is Asternith. He's a famous one. And then there's the famous lich, the Blood Queen of Waterdeep, Ashen Malor. Oh wait, is she not famous yet? Oh well, maybe she'll become famous. But I'm hoping that perked the ears of our Waterdeep group.
We've got an additional moniker for that.
Ashen Malor has a name. New. Yes, the Blood Queen of Waterdeep. So anyway, I think liches are cool because of their legendary status. Now, I give them legendary status. I'm assuming if they're named and they have pictures on the cover of books, that they're legendary. So basically, a lich is a remains of a great wizard who chose undeath to preserve themselves. Now, I think there's some cases where it was a choice, but it might have first been the choice of someone or something else, and they've been persuaded to become a lich, and they were happy with that in the long run, but it may not have initially been their idea of after death. they further their power at any cost, like killing their own brother, or killing things, or entrapment of things that might have in their previous life been things that were dear to them. But that's what makes them so evil, is the only thing that matters is their power. And so when you face one, they will literally do anything to destroy you. Mm-hmm. They long for forgotten knowledge, which might be your only way of salvation when you face a lich. Mm-hmm. You have something it needs or wants, like a blood dagger or something like that. And because death is no concern, this is really played well in, or we can see how it might be played well in the Honor Among Thieves with Zastam, is because they are immortal through time, they have no real rush to accomplish their goal.
Right.
If they can outlive something to achieve their goal, they'll do that. Yeah. They'll just stand back. And so as we see in Honor Among Thieves, Zastam is just sort of waiting his time. And he thinks he has it with creating the city of Neverwinter into Thay. When it fails, he just disappears and we don't see any more of him. Mm-hmm. So he's going to wait it out. And so a lich will wait it out if it can.
From a DM standpoint, that does make a really good big bad, because there's definitely a reason for him to be like, oh, whatever. Right. If you kind of write yourself into a corner where he's got him dead to rights, or they've outwitted him, but he has more than enough power to just squish him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but maybe it's not worth his effort right now.
That's true. And I mean, so we've mentioned Asher Malor. That is the main big bad at the moment for our Waterdeep group. You have something she needs and she wants, and therefore she doesn't just come out outright and kill you guys. Now, she's been known to do some pretty awful things, like drop a fireball in the middle of your party in the alley. I mean, really, that was her first really awful act as a brand new young lich. I don't know if you knew she was a lich at that time yet, but you knew she was dead at one point by that time. So she'll do things like that, but you have something she needs. Now, she might be perfectly content at this point because she thought she had it in hand, and Kervek tricked her, which I was not happy about. But as we talked last week in our show on Telesaria, sometimes as a DM, you got to let your players do those tricky things. And, Asher Malor, she can outlast you guys if she really wants to. Now, whether she wants to wait that long or not, that's up to you. But that's one of the cool things that I like playing her, is that she's got these qualities of a lich that I think are fun to play. Mm-hmm. That's sort of, okay, you won the day, but I'm going to win the whole thing because I can outlast any of you. And so that's kind of cool. Now, one way you can, so if you do defeat a lich, let's say you guys went and fought Ashmalor or Acerik or another lich. If you defeat the body of that lich, it is temporary. Mm-hmm. The spirit of that lich will return to its phylactery, which is where its soul is living, and the phylactery will reanimate the body within a couple of days. And so the body's back to life. So it gives you a temporary reprieve. If you were in a dire situation and you kill the lich, you can at least escape. You got 2 days to get away 2 days or so to get away. But it will come back. The only way to permanently defeat a lich is to destroy its phylactery. Mm-hmm. Again, when the lich is created, the wizards will grab the soul of the dying body and put it into this gem or amulet or whatever it is, and that's where the soul of it lives.
So it just sort of remanifests a body.
Yes.
Like you can't just keep stabbing the body once a day.
No, it won't even be there. Like it's just out of. I think it was described as out of the mists of the phylactery, the body will reanimate from nothing, apparently. So if you can find, that's the key, is if you can find the phylactery and destroy it, that permanently destroys the lich. Right. So therefore, liches will hide and heavily protect their phylactery. Now, one might say, well, wouldn't they just stick it in another plane of existence? Because they have that ability to move planes. It can, but if the phylactery is not on the plane that it dies in, it dies. So if the Lich is on the material plane, the likelihood of the phylactery to be on the material plane is very high as well.
Point of it?
Yeah, right. And so it's probably not too far away when you battle a Lich. It's just finding it that could be the difficulty.
Yeah. So that's probably the one way to get a Lich to really act quickly is if you are close to its phylactery.
Yes. And you'll probably feel that. If maybe you wouldn't be aware of it at the moment, but you're probably going to be heavy in battle with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Or you will be going through potentially a bunch of traps, a bunch of puzzles that would make it very difficult to reach that location. But it's not unheard of to find the phylactery. Here's an interesting piece about liches that I did not know until I was doing this research. A lich, because of it's so highly focused on its purpose of power and living forever, sometimes it loses its way mentally and it loses focus. And it forgets that it needs to feed its phylactery with souls. That's how the phylactery stays powerful, stays intact. Is it has to kill things and steal the souls and feed its phylactery on a regular basis. If it forgets to do that, that's where the demiliche comes from.
Okay.
So if the phylactery is drained of its souls, now it will still have the soul of the original lich, but if it forgets to feed it and it goes on to empty, the body of the lich will fall apart, but the head becomes a dracolich, and it will a demilich, and it exists that way. Now, if the demilich becomes refocused, which is possible, it could live as a demilich, which are awful things. They're a lot harder to hit than a regular lich. I mean, I shouldn't say a lot harder, but they are harder to hit than a demilich. Their hit points go way down from usually liches have in the hundreds, demiliches in the 50 to 80 range in hit points, but still very dangerous. It still has all of its spells and it remembers all of that. It still has its lair abilities if you come across the demilich in its lair. But if the demilich does then refocus and remember, I had a purpose in life or in undeath, and it kills some things and refills its phylactery, the lich can then reanimate itself and come back to life.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of a cool piece that I didn't know about, how that's how a demilich was created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of flavor. You could. That adds a lot of depth to a place's lore. If characters came across that and didn't know anything else.
Right.
Maybe they're the ones that inadvertently remind it or something.
Right. Yeah. So, it could be if Ashen forgets what her purpose is, and I don't know that anything causes that to happen. It loses focus because it's so focused on power. But then you guys come across her as a demilich, then she might have that recollection and be like, oh, that's what it was, and then kill something and fill its phylactery with the souls of the dead. So I don't know. I just think they're really cool, fascinating. I think part of my love of the Lich came from R.A. Salvatore's books, and learning about Zastam, and there's another Lich in there, Valindra Shadowmantle, who is sort of his, I don't know. Sometimes she's his lover. Sometimes she's just like a servant to him, but she is massively powerful, but can never seem to get as powerful as Zastam. He's always sending her off to do things, and she's unhappy about it, but then there's other motivations there as well. And I think that, as villains in that book, make liches really compelling to me. So anyway, that's my favorite.
We are surrounded by the spirits of the departed now.
Yes, we are.
Almost all malevolent.
Yes, indeed. So the undead, I think they're great to use in games.
Yes, I like using them because you don't really feel bad. In fact, there can be you can be doing them a favor by killing them for
by
real.
putting them out of their misery as well. About a year ago or so, we did a show on creatures to use with younger players, and when you don't want to have that moral issue of, do I kill something living, do I not kill something living? I think undead are great. As long as they're not too scary. Undead are great because of what you just said is, hey,
Skeletons.
You're actually going to be putting this thing out of its misery because it didn't choose to be a skeleton. It didn't choose to be this. So it's, I suppose, okay to kill it. So there's a possibility of that use of undead as well. So I don't know. I'm curious to hear how people use the undead in their game. What are some of your favorite undead creatures and monsters and whatnot to use? If you created your own legendary undead for your game as a main boss or as a secondary boss, love to hear those stories. Love to hear some of the names of the undead that you've created if you've given it a name, because I think some undead like Zastam and Aceric and Vecna, those all just sound very dangerous and awful. Let us know. teachersinthedungeon@gmail.com. And I just went brain frozen. The undead grabbed my brain. What is our Instagram and Facebook?
Teachers in the Dungeon.
Oh yeah, Teachers in the Dungeon, just the name of the show. And Twitter is @DungeonTeacher. I was getting the @ mixed up in all of them for some reason there. So thank you very much for that. Alrighty, folks. Thank you so much for joining us here in the dungeon. I hope you have a great October season. We will be back next week, but hope you're well into your plans for spooky season.
Yes.
Maybe some of the undead can make their appearance in your games. So for Dan, I'm Tom. This is Teachers in the Dungeon. Have a spooky roll of your 20s.